Oh no, it's Happy Times and Places, that bloke from all the Doctor Who DVDs and Blu-rays wanging on and trying to bring some enforced jollity into the world of Doctor Who, which we know is just full of anger. Anyway, he's going to try and choose his favourite things about a story chosen by a friend of his.
Hello, my name is Paul Cornell, I'm a writer, and you can find me on paulcornell.com. And my story that I'm going to nominate for Toby is The Curse of Peladon.
Well, welcome back, everybody. It is episode 2 of The Curse of Peladon, and I have a very pithy Paul Cornell rattling through his favourite things about this story. Paul, of course, is a very gifted Doctor Who writer. A very nice and very interesting man, fiercely liberal sort of fellow. So I must bear that in mind. He's somebody who. It's no surprise he's chosen a Pertwee story, I guess, because he's very much. When you see him sort of talking about things on social media, he very much, grapples with the injustices of the day and engages in a way that I'm increasingly not. Not because I necessarily think that's the right way. In fact, I think one probably has a duty to, but I don't know. My head is so mashed at the moment. Engaging in battles on social media seems far less a good use of my time than watching Doctor Who and saying nice things about it. Perhaps that's what I was put on this world to do. I thought it was maybe to play the definitive Hamlet, or win an Oscar at the height of my Hollywood career, or at least no, I don't think I was ever that confident. But at least I thought maybe be venerated for my Shakespearean character acting. But no, maybe it's to talk about Doctor Who. I don't know how I feel about that. And that's not to say I do it with any great skill either. It just seems to be what how I fill the gaps in my life, and just you lot seem to listen to it. So thanks for that. Anyway. I hope that didn't sound conceited. I was meant to be self-deprecating then, and then I worry it ended up with me going, and listen to me talking wisely about Doctor Who. No, I don't know that I throw this stuff out there in the hope that my glib tongue and ability to recall the occasional fact about a character actor makes for a diverting 25 minutes. And then I occasionally fall down introspection alley, or go to or take a turn down the self-deprecating road that then seems to pull out into self-aggrandizing peninsula. Oh God, I don't know what I'm talking about now. But anyway, whatever. Shut up and watch Doctor Who and then talk about it, Toby. That's what you do. Yes. So we're going to watch part 2 of The Curse of Peladon, which I absolutely adored part 1, having been quite surprised because previously on Happy Times and Places, I would say I'd never have picked this as a particular favourite. It was always one I've rather taken for granted, just because it was one of the first that I saw. So obviously once I'd seen one, that was a notch on the bedpost, and I was more excited about the ones that I hadn't seen. So because it was one I saw quite young, it never had quite that lustre for me because I'd seen it. And for me, I always want to sort of have or try what I haven't had or what I haven't experienced. Probably explains why I've got so many failed relationships. But anyway, not that I've ever... Anyway, let's not get into that. Let's shut up, Toby, and watch The Curse of Peladon, episode 2, that I'm going to press play. And you'll have heard in the background, it's been sort of setting off of its own volition. I'm going to press play in 3, 2, 1. It's The Curse of Peladon. Do you know what? Part of me wants to go back and edit that opening, but the whole point of these is that they are what they are. So if you didn't like it, sorry. I love this title sequence. I love this logo. I love this music. I love the fact that the music sounds like it's noises bouncing off the corners of time and space. It doesn't feel to me like it's played on any instrument. That is what I think is glorious about it. There's lots of lovely stuff there. Hepesh is protecting the king. Hepesh is again the king essentially, and yet he's doing it for him. So that's a beautiful dynamic. He's very protective of the king, but does bad things for the king's own good. There's a lot to say there. The fact that the Doctor has rescued Islia means that they now have a nice bond. And the Doctor, obviously, of course, absolutely cutting through the poppycock of any idea that there's a curse, and going, well, no, it's ghosts don't push statues over. Shows the Doctor's worth to a story like this, just as the character that the Doctor is. And here is Alpha Centauri, who I barely talked about in episode 1. I love Alpha Centauri. I love Stuart Fell's funny little doddery, fussy body language. And his Anne Churchman, what a bloomin' legend that she has. She got the biggest gap between Doctor Who performances, and she's in her 90s now. And I was always, because this was one of the first DVD commentaries that I did. I think it was the second set, and we had Terence Dix, Barry Letts, Chris Doyley-John and Katie Manning on Curse. Is there a crash zoom here? But if not, that's a lovely. I love that shot, the depth that we've got there. That set has the throne room behind it, and then the throne room has a raised bit as well. So the staging of that, look at the depth and the amount of characters in that shot, and then we cut to a high shot in the throne room. So really brilliant use of space, a very canny piece of blocking as well, to make the picture constantly interesting and attractive, and have the dynamics of the positioning of the people. That's really well directed by Lenny Mayne. What was I talking about? Yes, nice moments between Joe and the Doctor, where he trusts her to go and do a little bit of investigating, and she's got the chutzpah to do it. And I like anything that's a sort of an unspoken moment, and Pertwee can be very patronising of Joe. I mean, Pertwee. I refer to the Doctor as Pertwee. But they also have those moments of understanding between them that I really, really like. He's complex. He's a complex Doctor, old Pertwee, isn't he? Because he can be infuriating sometimes. But you get the impression that that's the sort of point. But I think because we also know that John Pertwee himself could be a bit sort of pompous and a bit testy, we go, well, is that just him doing that with the Doctor? And do we want a Doctor who's flawed? But of course, the whole point of his Doctor is that he is flawed. That's his whole journey, isn't it? And he's ultimately punished for his flaws in Planet of the Spiders and cleansed in a Buddhist way, which is just great. That the most sort of clubbable and establishment Doctor is detoxed by Buddhism. But there is no plot. I'm being completely honest with you. In fact, I think in Paul's book, The Discontinuity Guide, not just Paul, Marty Day and Keith Topping as well, they use that as a double entendre, don't they? Or as a line that King Peladon's saying there is no plot, i.e. there's no plot in this story, but there's plenty of plot in this story. Haven't even mentioned that King Peladon is played by David Troughton. I was so excited when I read in the credits of the Doctor and the Monsters showing. I was a credit reader even then. David Troughton, son of Patrick. Oh, how exciting! And I know David said that he was. I've had the pleasure of interviewing David. That he was. I think offered this, having been an extra in Enemy of the World. We can spot him. I love the relationship between Joe and King Peladon. I mean, Peladon is a bit soppy, but you know what? Again, when I was 8 or however old I was, I absolutely fell hook, line, and sinker for this, and they don't have an awful lot of time to sort of establish it. It's very much it doesn't develop like a relationship in a modern drama developments. It's a bit sort of fairy tale, and yet the two actors absolutely sell it. You know how to chat up the girls, Peladon. Well, he does now. He makes a real hash of it later on. I love you. I'm going to execute your friend. But I totally buy this. And this is beautifully shot. The close-ups of the hands and everything. Again, I think the sort of quality. But look at the way that she looks at him. And you would fall in love with her, wouldn't you? Of course you'd fall in love with her. Now he's going to put his foot in it. Yes. Hey, baby. Do you want to come back to my place and speak to the Commission of Aliens? Oh, it's wonderful because it's all great character stuff, and it's good for their dynamic. And the fact that he mucks it up so royally, excuse the pun, is the sort of point. But it totally works. He's excellent. She's excellent. That's a brilliant shot of Hepesh doing his, again, fairly sort of cliched high priest thing. And I've always wanted to have some of that stuff that you throw into the flames to make it go. And I loved Grun the King's Champion. I discovered a thing that I don't think was understood by the Doctor Who people sorting out the DVDs and stuff. In that, because Grun is credited as Gordon St. Clair, but I once saw an advertisement for an Australian Doctor Who convention that said Gordon Stoppard, Grun from The Curse of Peladon, will be appearing or whatever. And then there's Gordon Stothard, who is a Cyberman in The Wheel in Space, and actually then crops up as one of the warehousemen in The Invasion, where there are plenty of Cybermen and he doesn't play any of them. But if you look at those warehousemen, they're Gordon Stothard and Miles Northover, who's a Croton. So both of those warehousemen who in episodes 2 and 3 of The Invasion, or certainly episode 2, who carry the crates and have the strength of, because they've been cyberly augmented or whatever, are the faces underneath Doctor Who monsters from around that time. And you can see that one of them is Grun. And I went, so Gordon St. Clair is Gordon Stoppard, is Gordon Stothard. They're all one and the same person. And then it all sort of fell into place. But I don't think anybody had kind of put that together when we were looking at where to find people for the DVDs and stuff like that. And I've had an email about Gordon recently, which might not be good news. I need to double check that. I kept meaning to write to him. He's definitely went to Australia. I mentioned him to Derek Ware, and Derek Ware wasn't very complimentary, and I can't remember why now. But Derek could be a bit downbeat, especially on people who weren't proper stuntmen. It's because Gordon, of course, has the very long fight scene in this, and Derek was not happy about The Curse of Peladon because it's the one outing, isn't it, of Profile, which is basically Terry Walsh's outfit that was basically stealing the Havoc idea, but then it was just Terry Walsh. It wasn't Profile, and Profile were never seen or heard of again. But Derek Ware was not happy about the departure of Havoc from Doctor Who, and in fact a lot of 70s television, because he was stung by not being able to be a stunt union, and I think he felt that Terry Walsh kind of nicked the Doctor Who gig off him because he was a good double for John Pertwee. Love the relationship between these two. So Katie and Gordon Stothard both ended up in Australia. But I loved Grun. I remember, again, when I watched this for the first time, the good-hearted mute. Looking at it now, it's sort of as patronising as the strong, silent, and he's black man character of of Evil of the Daleks and Tomb of the Cybermen, and you go, I mean, can we not have another character from the black person? You know, that seems a little bit. You go, oh, that's a bit. And now that I'm much more conscious of how disability is portrayed, you know. You know, I have to be conscious that I'm not being patronising of the mute character by going, oh, well, he can't talk, but he's got a heart of gold, and he's easily duped. I mean, substitute black man for disabled man, and you've sort of got the similar sort of character. But you could also say, and they're all tall as well. They're being mean about tall people, but I like the Doctor's relationship with Grun, and I like the fact that Grun, although he is sort of controlled by Hepesh for a bit, ultimately does the sort of right thing, and the Doctor spares him in the fight later, doesn't he? Which I like all of that sort of stuff. This is a great ruse, of course, because, spoiler alert, Arcturus is the bad guy, but this is a nice little plot sleight of hand that the Doctor, of course, thinks it's the Ice Warriors, because the Ice Warriors are bad guys. In fact, the Doctor's being a little bit racist here. You know, he's encountered some bad Martians in the past, and he's like, well, I'm automatically going to think it's you. And Alan Bennion is excellent as Islea. I've got a feeling Paul wrote somewhere that Isleo is one of his favourite Doctor Who characters. I might have to bear that in mind for when I'm choosing my favourite things. I remember there's a bit in this where it doesn't Skell say, I found it in the hands of the princess. I'm sure that comes later because he finds her when she's searching the Martian quarters. Oh yeah, because it's been planted. So the sort of whodunit mystery is fairly economically and elegantly done as a piece of straightforward adventure storytelling. So a lot of things going out of focus in this. I love these Ice Warrior costumes. And this is lovely Sunny Caldinez. There's a theory amongst some of the high brains of fandom that Skell, who's the one in Monster Peladon, and Sorg in this are actually voiced by Barry Letts. And I'm sure David Brunt... Yeah, why are you here? But I thought he'd got a hint of... Yeah, because I always thought he had a slightly American accent, but a Barbadian or a Jamaican accent can seem... Must inform Islea. Yeah, isn't that sort of that slightly American sounding thing a bit? Could that not be a slightly Caribbean sort of twang that Sonny Caldinez does actually have? But David Brunton, I think Nick Pegg and some of those hybrids swear that it was Barry Letts who was too honourable to say that he'd done an acting job in Doctor Who, but that did sort of slip that fact to them in a brown envelope or under the table. I don't know either way, but it's an interesting curio that has been raised as a thing. Lovely, again, high shot there. This is great work from Lenny Mayne. Because you actually think Grun is being, or the Doctor thinks Grun is being helpful, but he does actually become an ally later on. But I do like Arcturus. I just love the design. I love everything about Arcturus. He's this brilliant head in a box that's got that liquid flowing through. He's got that chippy little gittish delivery about him. But Alpha Centauri is, responsible for one of the great Doctor Who anecdotes of director Lenny Mayne saying, taking one look at the costume that didn't have the cloak at the time and going, looks like a giant dick, and then take it away, and they take it away and put a cloak on it and send it back to him and goes, now it looks like a giant dick in a cloak. I love that story. Does that sound like Barry Letts? Oh, I don't know. Because, of course, I always found it slightly perplexing that they go to the trouble of giving the Ice Warriors mouths, and you can occasionally see the mouths move in some of the other Ice Warrior stories. But the mouth doesn't actually move. It's the hands of the Earth Princess. That's the bit I remember. Although I think I'd remembered it as being Sorg saying it. But it always perplexed me slightly. That actually the Ice Warrior, they go to the trouble of giving it a mouth, but then when it talks, its mouth doesn't open or close. You go, oh, why? I don't understand that, because it would be easy enough to do to have the actor opening it. And I know the Ice Warriors are sort of post-dubbed. Islier isn't, because he's got a very mobile mouth, but the other Ice Warriors, including Bernard Bresslaw in the Ice Warriors, are pre-recorded and sort of mouth along. But it seems a bit odd to have a totally closed mouth on a costume that has a slit for a mouth and an actor with a mouth. But not quite got to the bottom of why they do that. This is very well done. Again, this film stuff, such a limited amount of it, but that I really feel the wind and that whistling noise. You can it really sells the whole sort of inclement weather. And that's brilliant. That you totally buy the height and the stones sort of tumbling down and the dust. It's all really, really nicely done, and that whipping wind. This is great stuff, isn't it? This is great stuff, and just the Doctor and the companion are very game throughout this. They engage in the adventure, and they throw themselves into the danger. Terrific. Gotta love it. Why have I never loved this story like this? I think it's just because I'd seen it so early that I was more interested in the stuff that I hadn't seen. So I did get to do the DVD commentary on this. We couldn't get David Troughton, and I think there was a feeling at the time as, he doesn't want to be on it because he doesn't want to talk about his dad or whatever. And then I emailed him to do Who's Round, and he was perfectly happy. He talked to me, and I've worked with David a couple of times, and he's absolutely great and perfectly open. I think he was just busy and not available. Love the costume for Agador, mighty Nick Hobbs. I saw Nick Hobbs in a BBC thing only a couple of years ago, and of course he's in Amy's Choice. He's one of the few credited classic series actors. I got into trouble for saying this. I mentioned that Gilbert Wynne in the Crotons. I said, you were one of the few actors to have done classic Doctor Who and Torchwood. And somebody went on a forum and went, there's this actor and this actor. And you go, are you going to quibble with my use of the word few? It's just my way of pointing out that Gilbert Wynne was in Torchwood and in Doctor Who. I think it's reasonable to say few, because of all of the actors that have been in Doctor Who, not that many of them have been in Torchwood. But I love the fact somebody will go to a forum to quibble with such phraseology. Compared to the amount of actors that have been in Doctor Who, Nick Hobbs is one of the comparatively few. These Ice Warriors look great. These corridors are brilliant design. They've got real length to them. You really get the sense of scale. And they're great costumes, the Ice Warrior costumes. Nick Hobbs is in Amy's Choice, because he's a stuntman as well as an actor. He's mostly a stuntman. And I saw him in this BBC drama, and I went, that's Nick Hobbs. Isn't that great that he's still working? Because, as I say, it was very recently. And I went, but he's surely not going to survive this opening sequence that he's quite prominent in, because he's Nick Hobbs. And he goes to the roof and chucks himself off. But I was very pleased that I still, because you always play that game with Terry Walsh, don't you, where you go, he's going to climb up a ladder and fall off it, or get clonked over their head. And I was pleased to see Nick Hobbs and go, he's going to fall off something. I think the Ice Warrior costumes are very, very, very good, and it always excited me because, of course, I knew when watching these Ice Warrior costumes that they'd been in old Doctor Who, so they were even better because they were basically, the longer ago it was, the less likely I was to have been alive when it was on. the better. Self-hating can you get that the further away something is from your existence, the better it actually is. But he's got great dignity, old Alan Bennion, and Islir is a fantastic character. I remember loving him so much. I like Sorg's sonic cannon as well. I do prefer, I think, the sonic cannon to the sort of wrist guns that the other Ice Warriors have, which. But I guess because this was my first experience of Ice Warriors, and sometimes your first is your sort of definitive. Because I wonder if for fans who had been brought up on the original, the Ice Warriors of yore, I can't believe they've given him a sonic cannon. Why hasn't he got an arm gun? This is a complete aberration of what the Ice Warriors meant to be. Clearly, when they forged the Way of Peace, they got rid of their wrist weapons and went for a handheld cannon instead. But haven't the modern Ice Warriors also not got the brilliant claw things too? Yeah, I mean, come on, guys, make it work. I love the Ice Warrior claws. If Sorg can grip onto his cannon and not make it go off at the wrong time with a claw, surely a modern Ice Warrior could cope with having a claw. Lots of beautiful, it trusts its costumes to go in that close. Lenny Mayne is not afraid to pull the camera right back in the set to give it a sense of depth and scale, or then to get right close in on his actors and his and he also does a few zooms, doesn't he? I seem to recall. I'm really impressed with Lenny Mayne's direction of this. And he's not a director that often gets sort of praised, particularly in the his story is that he was the funny sweary Aussie who died tragically. Indeed, I've made a documentary about him and was very very pleased and flattered to be so welcomed by his twin daughters Sadie and Nikki. Hepesh is a wily old fox, isn't he? But the beauty of Hepesh is that he is doing the right thing as far as he is concerned. It's not some crazy, I want to take over the world because I'm mad, or I want to kill people because I'm evil. He is worried about the future of his planet, and he doesn't want to enter the EEC. He's basically a Brexiteer, although I am not of that inclination, I am not somebody who dismisses people of different political views to me of being awful, evil people beyond redemption, because if you think like that, you're essentially a Dalek. What is the truth and what is best? It's usually a mixture of things, and I'm aware of the inherent contradictions and flaws in my own political view, and I have to be in that of others. But we, by acknowledging we're all hoping for the best. Even though we have different ideas about how to achieve that, I think you're on a better footing. That may make me sound naive, and yes, I know some people are gits, but there are gits on both sides of the Galactic Federation argument. But I think this very maturely. Although Terence Dix would also say, well, we'd always say, well, we didn't, that was all, there was never any intention to do political stuff. Rubbish. You're not telling me that this is a coincidence and that the miners in Monster of Peladon are a coincidence. It's just that Terence would always sort of back that sort of stuff. Oh no, we just didn't want the test card. There's absolutely no way that the parallels between this and the entry into the common market were just a massive coincidence. Terence just didn't want to make a big thing of it because he would never suggest he was making anything highfalutin, because he was far too humble, and because he wasn't. He was making a kids' adventure serial, but it is one that resonates because of things like this. That could be one of my favourite things, the political subtext and the way that it handles it, I think, quite maturely. I also like Joe and King Peladon. I love that scene where they seem to be getting on, and then he goes, yeah, could you, before we, here's some flowers, here's some perfume, I'd love you to put on that perfume when you go and speak to the other delegates on my behalf, or whatever. I love Alpha Centauri, I love Islia. Paul's going to choose Islia at some point, or the fact that the Ice Warriors are good. I might roll those two things into one. I will choose for this particular episode. What was my favourite bit? I think the scene between Joe and King Peladon, which speaks to, I wonder if I should save this for the last episode, because I think it's really sad when she says goodbye to him and they have a little kiss. But I think, because Joe has several sort of attempted affairs, doesn't she? And I don't think I'll be choosing her holding hands with the Thal Lartep. But I think this one really does work, and I remember it taking. And I'm not one particularly for soppiness in Doctor Who. I certainly don't do cartwheels of joy at the idea of the Doctor being in love with somebody, because frankly all other programs have central characters who fall in and out of love with each other, and as somebody that finds, as a kid who was never very confident about such things, it was nice to have a series where those things weren't important, that you could have an exciting and adventurous life whilst being a bit unsure that you'd ever be able to ask a girl out or whatever. And I think Doctor Who being quite asexual is a refreshing point of difference between Doctor Who and other characters. I actually think the way that Russell T Davies dealt with that was actually very good. So even though my natural disinclination towards it, I can be changed. I can be made to swing in the other direction. But yes, I'm disinclined to sort of care that much about lovey-dovey stuff in Doctor Who, because everyone's programmes have lovey-dovey stuff in, whereas Doctor Who's is the one with the exciting aliens and blah-de-blah-de-blah. However, when it does it, and it does it well, it can be, because sometimes it does it badly. No, Lartep, Andrid, etc. But I think this is so well played by the two actors. And it's done with such economy, and yet that it's pulled off. It's believable, even though its raw elements are not believable. It happens so quickly and in such a small amount of scenes, and he makes such a hash of it so often. But it works because of the way that it's played and the way that it's done. They get given just enough, and the actors are trusted to use the small amount of screen time they have to do that. To do it, and they do it, and it is very touching. And even though, it's brave enough to sort of show Peladon's to screwing up, but for kind of understandable reasons. And I liked all the shooting of it; those lovely close-ups of the hands and and that ties in with Lenny Main's shooting right close up in the faces as well. So Joe and King Peladon kissing in a tree, kissing in a throne room, with his boots and his shorts, which is an odd combination, isn't it? His shorts, barely cover his thighs, and his boots go right above his knees. I think that's certainly a combination you don't see very often. That I won't be. I have to say, I won't be I won't be rocking up to the Chorlton Arts Club in that kind of combo. I'm strictly a cardigan man nowadays. Now, I've got to find Paul on my computer here. What's he going to choose? Paul Cornell, Doctor Who writer, special guest. Choose about The Curse of Peladon, episode 2.
From episode 2, my favourite thing is Jo's relationship with King Peladon.
Get in!
It's so well drawn and gives the companion her own screen time and her own plot in a much meatier way, and is actually amounts to something more than the usual companion and guest cast member look at each other a little bit fondly and then go their separate ways at the end of 4 episodes.
Yeah, absolutely. It is, and it was worth picking. Definitely worth picking, because then suddenly the hate does coming from behind, which I wouldn't advise you to do, King Peladon, not until you've smoothed things out. Sorry. But judging by the 2 introductions I've done to these episodes, that's not going to be the worst thing I say for this edition of the podcast. Anyway, so I'm going to go to bed now. Much happier than I was an hour ago when I started this look at The Curse of Peladon, because I've done episodes 1 and 2 together. And I'll return for episodes 3 and 4, as will you. But I go to bed. Even Stevens with... I hope I get to do that at the Green Death. How are you doing? Stevens, we're evens. But I'm, Even Stevens with Paul Cornell, as we're halfway through The Curse of Peladon. Thank you very much for joining me, and I will speak to you next time we find ourselves trying to gain entry into the common market. Spoilers, reader, we did, and then we aren't anymore. But that's one of those other things I won't get into online. Am I a coward? I just think there are probably better people at doing it than me. Anyway, I think there's better people at doing most things, everything, than me, apart from waffling on and not knowing how to end a podcast. I'm very good at that, and I'm about to hopefully now get bad at it by ending the podcast, by going bye-bye. Now, the end. Bye. 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 Well, I think you're all very lovely for listening to Happy Times and Places, which is presented by me, Toby Hadoke. My special guest at the moment is Doctor Who and other things writer Paul Cornell. He can be found at paulcornell.com, on Twitter at Paul_Cornell, and he is the co-host of the Hammer House of Podcast at HammerHousePod on Twitter. Find all of those things. I would very much like to spend the rest of the theme tune thanking the patrons who make these podcasts possible, and they include Neil Tate, Nick Temple, Sabrina Tirabassi, Reynard Toombs, David Trainier, Apollo C. Vermouth, Gary Wales, Adam Westwood, Rich Wiggins, Michael Williams, Andrew Willis, Andrew Wilson, Stephen White, Adam Parker, James Bell, Lee Wakeley, and Rhys Williams. The music for these podcasts is by Dave Gates, and the artwork by Dylan Patterson. And if you too would like to be a patron, you get a name check every now and again. You also get advance releases, exclusive material, more material per week than comes out on iTunes, and lots of other little goodies, including photos of my dog, which may not sound like all that, but actually people do like them because he's a very cute dog. Unless you don't like cute dogs, in which case that's free anyway. That's not part of the £3 per month, which is the entry level Patreon tier. You can get 10% off that, and indeed any of the tiers, if you sign up for a year. But that lowest tier gets you access to most of the things. There are a couple of little trinkets further up the ladder, which goes up to £1 million if you'd like it to. I'll accept any figure. But as I say, for most patrons, everything is pretty much available. And also, if you cannot do the Patreon thing, because that's a monthly commitment, which is quite a lot to ask, well, I'll tell you what you can do. You can go to ko-fi.com/Toby Hadoke, and it's like a sort of virtual busking. If you are so inclined that day, having listened to one of the podcasts, to chuck me a few pennies, you can do it to any denomination you like, and you don't have to do it ever again. That's ko-fi.com/Toby Hadoke. I'll tell you what costs nothing, though. And that's going to iTunes or Podbean or some of those other places. Every time people come and say, I actually get my podcast from here. Do you do them there? And I go, apparently, but I don't know. Why can't everyone just do the same thing? But anyway, go to your place and give these 5 stars. 5 stars really, really helps. And a couple of lines of review saying what you like about the podcast. Because there's a lot of Doctor Who podcasts out there, and a lot of them are very, very good indeed. And this just helps to attract attention of any passing consumer who may not have been aware of the gold in these aerials. So if you could, 5 stars and a few positive lines of review wherever you get your podcast from would be hugely appreciated. This set of credits and post credits is a little bit poppy. I'm actually not done it in my little cupboard. I've stayed out, but I've noticed it's a bit poppy, which isn't great on the ears. So we might have to have less poppy podcasts next time. My son's dog is called Poppy. She'd be welcome on that. She's quite noisy. She's quite needy. She's not as well behaved as Bernard. It's always the same when it's your dog, isn't it? Yes. My dog's terribly well. It's not like the other dogs. But, I mean, he is asleep now. Poppy would be nuzzling, trying to get attention. And desperate. Anyway, but why do you care? You don't care. Anyway, I haven't seen Poppy for ages. She's very sweet. But she's quite high maintenance. Right. But she's a different sort of Poppy to the poppiness of the P sounds in this particular podcast. They're quite common things when you suddenly have to be aware of them.